Good morning and welcome to The Point. Just over 3 weeks before the election, it's time to take a look at the race for governor. Both the Republican incumbent and the Democratic challenger. Now, as you know, getting the two of them together for a real debate has proved to be challenging. But this week, electronically, you'll be able to hear the candidates' answers to the same questions back to back. It's the same process we used 4 years ago, an opportunity for you to hear what the candidates have to say about the important issues facing Michigan. So this morning, here is our chance to bring those answers to you with Republican incumbent Governor Rick Snyder and Democratic challenger Mark Schauer. To the point. One of the questions that a lot of people who are watching this morning want to know is, what will you do about schools? Now, in fairness, your opponent has talked a good deal about what he believes you have already done about schools. But talking about K-12 education and K-12 education funding, what would 4 years, a second 4 years of a Snyder administration look like?
Yeah, well, Rick, I'd put it in the even bigger context. I call it P20, prenatal through lifelong learning. Because how do we help people succeed? You can't wait until someone starts the K part. So we're actually doing things with prenatal visits even to get the focus in on infant wellness instead of infant mortality and really be more proactive and positive there. Preschool, we've led the nation, and we should be so proud. When I took office, we had 29,000 kids on a waiting list that couldn't go to preschool because of need. Over the last 2 budget years, we put $130 million more in, so we're now a no-wait state for preschool. We've made the largest investment in dollars or percentage over any other state in the nation. We should be really proud of that because, again, you need that early start. K-12, again, that's an opportunity to clear up the biggest piece of hogwash on TV today is the ads out there that are lying when they said I cut K-12 state funding. That's just a flat-out lie, and that's been verified by multiple news sources. So we put $1.1 billion additional dollars in K-12 state dollars over the last few years. The last budget I signed was $1 billion higher, but it shouldn't just be about numbers or dollars. It's about student growth, and we can do more there. So in a second term, one thing I'd really like to emphasize more and more is people's ability to read in 3rd grade, because that's a real benchmark metric. The other one is when you get towards that transition between high school and community college or universities or trade school in some fashion. We need to do a much better job. That's our huge missing opportunity is career tech education in the state. We need to reestablish that as a major track because literally there's tens of thousands of open, good, well-paying jobs waiting there. So that's a top priority for me.
K through 12 education.
Yes.
Under a Schauer administration,
Yes.
what does it look like?
Well, we have to keep our constitutional guarantee of a quality education for every child, regardless of their zip code or their family's income. To me, public education is the silver bullet. It's the key to helping Michigan compete in a global economy, and it's the key to helping our kids compete. So what I'm going to do is start by putting the money that Rick Snyder took out of the classroom, away from our schools. We're going to take the profit motive out of education. You know, our governor in this legislature lifted the cap on the number of charter schools and created all these virtual schools. Most of these are for-profit schools that are using dollars to pay corporate shareholders and CEOs and slick advertising. We need to put dollars into our schools. So public education will be my top priority. You know, parents in East Grand Rapids shouldn't be holding bake sales to make sure that they're foreign language for their kids in high school. We deserve better than that.
Tell me a little bit about how that translates then to higher education, because it's part and parcel. I mean, perhaps not everybody needs to go to college, but higher education costs have become a real issue. They have inverted from having the state pay the lion's share to having people who pay tuition pay the lion's share.
Well, years ago, the state paid about 75% of the cost of going to college, and tuition was about 25%. Now that's flipped. You know, when my opponent came into office, he cut higher education by 15%. You know, tuition has gone up each and every year of the Snyder administration. I just met with a Wayne State University student who wants to be a teacher. She's graduating with $32,000 worth of student loan debt. You know, that's not right. So we've got to, the state has to fulfill its commitment and understand that higher education is a key to providing the workforce for Michigan to have a high-wage, high-skill, high-growth economy. You know, my administration will also provide more need-based financial aid. I've got a proposal to help students refinance their student loan through a new student loan refinance authority. So it is about making college affordable, and you know, being governor is about making choices. This governor came in, his top priority was a $1.8 billion corporate tax cut. Even when companies sent jobs overseas or cut jobs, didn't create any jobs, paid for it by cutting $1 billion from our public schools, cutting higher education by 15%, raising taxes on retiree pensions and on working families. And I think those are the wrong choices for Michigan, and the states that have faster growing economies, lower unemployment rates, invest in education, invest in their communities and infrastructure, and we've been, under this governor, disinvesting, and it's not working.
What do you do, if anything, about the funding of higher education and or technical education and those kind of things going forward to keep some people from being priced out of a good job?
Yeah, there's 3 levels to it. The first one is we can work with the universities and the higher ed universe on being more cost efficient. Again, looking at their structures, how they can be more accountable, better value for money. It was great. Recently, I had some great feedback from Grand Valley's president about how we put metrics in, how our funding is now tied to performance metrics for the universities. And he respected that. He thought that was a good, helpful thing. So that's important. Second one is need-based financial aid. Again, if people have need, let's try to help people out in a constructive fashion. And the third one is being innovative. Let's think out of the box here a little bit. And the great illustration that's going on across our state is dual enrollment, where young people can get college credit while they're in high school. And it's wonderful. I was in the Battle Creek area at Kellogg Community College. They had 1,200 students doing dual enrollment. That's a huge number. And if you can get a year of college done while you're still in high school, and it's very viable, you've saved 25% on a bachelor's degree, 50% on an associate's degree. That makes education much more affordable.
When we first sat down to talk, we might have eliminated every other conversation, every other issue, because jobs dominated everything. Things are better in the state, but by your own admission, not as good as you would like to see them. So what, in addition to what you just talked about, does a jobs program, or I don't even want to call it a jobs program, a plan to help people find jobs?
Yeah, the top priority is still more and better jobs in terms of creating opportunities for people. And a great illustration is this German apprenticeship model I brought back from a trade mission. And we created Michigan Advanced Technician Training, MAT squared. And the way it works is, and this is actually operating today, is young people get hired into the program, they start working for a company, the company alternates having them go to school, the company pays the tuition for their tuition cost at community college. After 3 years, they'll get an associate's degree, they get a certificate, they have a guaranteed job, and they have a work commitment for 2 years. That's awesome. I mean, that's truly an exciting thing. And the first field we're doing was mechatronics, which is a combination of mechanics and electronics. Most people have never heard of it. But these are the folks running industrial automation equipment or robotics equipment. They've got a career for the rest of their lives. So it's a good, well-paying job. So think about that. And the Grand Rapids area, I want to compliment. There's been something similar here that's just fabulous, the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership, doing similar kind of things. So let's get that all in an umbrella, and then instead of having dozens of students in those programs, let's look to say, how can we get hundreds or thousands having that great opportunity?
Let's talk about jobs. 4 years ago, that was all anybody wanted to talk about. And if you look at the employment rate, it is better than it was 4 years ago. But I don't think anybody thinks that employment in Michigan is where it should be. What does a Schauer jobs plan look like?
Well, you know, and I think we've got to look at what's happened under this current governor. You know, I will stack my record up of fighting for every single job with anyone. You know, when I was in the state legislature, I fought like heck, whether it was helping a small tool and die company in Jackson that couldn't get access to capital and help build an important component for the military, or Brembo Brakes in Homer, Michigan, looking to add manufacturing jobs in China or Michigan, and we helped change the law. Now they're on their 3rd expansion. You know, I've got a lot of stories like that, but I was there at a critical time to help rescue the auto industry, and our current governor said the auto rescue was overblown. I disagree. We need to fight for manufacturing jobs, and I will do that. We'll stop giving tax breaks to companies that outsource jobs. Give tax incentives to companies that create jobs here, but if they don't, they'll have to repay every single penny. You know, I'm going to create a Michigan insourcing initiative within my economic development office to help companies that are here that want to bring other parts of their companies here, or bring jobs from out of the country here in Michigan. I'm going to have tough Buy Michigan provisions. So when the state spends its tax dollars, we don't print and publish the Pure Michigan Travel Guide from an Iowa company like is done under this current governor. But it starts with talent. It starts with having strong, healthy communities. We've got to put back some of the tools, economic development tools that were taken away by this governor. But let's be clear, our current governor is, well, said what the auto rescue was overblown, is very happy to take credit for the comeback of the auto industry and all of those manufacturing jobs. We've got the 5th worst unemployment rate in the country. We're one of the few states that hasn't recovered all of the jobs lost in the Great Recession. And get this is very important because folks have to decide whether they think this governor is doing a good job with the economy and if the economy is working for them. Our rate of job growth here in Michigan is 1/3 of the nation's GDP growth rate. I mean, we're not keeping up. So when I'm governor, we're going to create an economy that works for everyone, not just for the wealthy and not just the well-connected.
Both Democrat Mark Schauer and Republican Rick Snyder have more to say. You'll hear that when we come back to the point. Welcome back to the Point. We continue this morning to hear about the issues from the two major party candidates for governor, Republican Rick Snyder, Democrat Mark Schauer. You don't have to be a candidate running for governor to find out by driving around the state how bad the roads are. And there is almost unanimous agreement that our roads, bridges, and other infrastructure are in bad shape. So there is no unanimous agreement about how to pay to fix those roads. How would you do it?
Well, and I've campaigned in every one of our 83 counties, so I have experienced it firsthand. And I talk to drivers every day that are spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on car repairs as a result of inaction. We need more than talk in cheerleading about this. When I was in the legislature in my first term in 1997 and 98, that was the last time we did something significant to fix our roads. Now, I was a Democrat in a Republican district and had a big bullseye on my back, but I joined Republican Governor John Engler to solve that problem at that time. When I was in Congress, I helped bring almost $850 million to help fix our roads. The problem with our current governor, he's made this a top priority for 3 years. He has a legislature of his own party and has gotten absolutely nothing done. It's because he's proposing raising taxes on retirees and on working families, the same folks that are already paying more for his corporate tax giveaway that isn't working. So what I will do is lead. I will bring Democrats and Republicans together. First, make sure we get our fair share from Washington, and having worked at the congressional level, I'll work with our delegation in the White House to do that. We're going to cut out all of the wasteful contracts and abuse within state government, like this Aramark prison food service contract, Rick Snyder's contract to his cousin George's furniture business for furniture the state didn't need. We're going to place all of those savings to our schools and our roads and repealing this pension tax. But then if we need more resources to fix our roads, we're going to do it in a fair way. The reason, let me say 2 more quick things, Rick. When the legislature was working together, Democrats and Republicans, at the beginning of the summer, close to striking a deal, Rick Snyder was in Manhattan at a fundraiser for his campaign and literally phoned it in. I will be there with the legislature, with my sleeves rolled up, working to find solutions. The other point is the legislature, Democrats in the legislature were trying to do this in a fair way. We have the heaviest truck weights in Michigan that beat up our roads. And they were asking those heavy trucks to pay a portion to fix our roads. And the Republican-controlled Senate killed that proposal. I think there could have been a deal if businesses were a part of the solution. I think Michiganders just want fairness. If they're going to sacrifice more, they need to make sure it's part of a fair shared sacrifice. And that will be my approach, to make sure that the business community that benefits from good roads, that is paying more for wear and tear on their trucks, they're a part of the solution too.
There has been a conversation, started largely by you, that the infrastructure in this state needs serious attention. I believe the number you started out with was 1.2 billion, perhaps 1.5
billion. $1.5 billion.
And that's not just for a year. That's every year for the next 10 years. I want to talk a little bit, and please feel free to explain your position on that, because that's only fair, but I also want to figure out why after a couple of years, 2.5 years, it still hasn't happened.
Well, when you ask for that kind of revenue increase, it's hard work, and it doesn't happen. The last time it happened was '97. So this is only something that comes up every decade to 2 decades. And to do it in an election year is particularly hard. So I've been on this for 2 years now, and we do need to invest more. And the benchmark I like to ask people is, who do we know that had a bent tire or a blown tire or a bent rim in the last year? Almost everybody knows somebody. And the question is, that's several $100s quite often. And couldn't that have been better if we would have put that in our roads to begin with, so you didn't have that problem? So there's a huge opportunity that we need to invest that will create more jobs, it will save lives, and save us cost structures.
When you look at the dollars and cents, and I know that you don't necessarily want to prescribe a particular way to do it, because you obviously have legislative partners, but you suggested, well, if you did this, it would generate this much money. You know that your opponent has been saying, well, yes, roads need to be taken care of, but we don't want to tax the same people that they say have been taxed in the past. Does this have to be a broad-based general tax increase, or to get that revenue, are you going to have to go to businesses that have lots of trucks or businesses that use roads more extensively?
Well, businesses will pay quite a bit of this in some fashion, because if you look at it, it's really looking at the user fee concept, whether it be a registration fee or on gasoline or fuel in some fashion. That if you use more fuel, you're going to pay more. And that applies to whether you're driving as a, just a person around town to get groceries, or if you're a business, you've got a delivery vehicle. You're going to pay even more, most likely. So that's where it does get spread about the people actually using the roads, and I think it's a fair assessment to say, well, if you're using the roads more, you should contribute more.
You point out accurately, it's tough to get done in an election year. Does this get done before whomever takes office January 1st takes office?
That's the way I view it. I think this should happen in lame duck. I think prior to the election is not realistic. But as soon as the election's over with, let's get it done. And I think we've seen a lot of positive signs from the legislators that they want to get this done.
When you talk about this election cycle, it's difficult to do it without talking about taxes, because, again, your opponent has made much about a pension tax, about reduction in deductions for other middle class or lower middle class families that he says equate to a tax increase. I asked him how you would replace some of that money. When you look at those things that you put in place in that first budget largely, are those things that are there to stay? Are those structural changes that stay? Or is there a plan at some point, if the economy gets better, to make changes in some of that structure?
Well, it depends on the particular item. In terms of, we had a big deficit when I took office, so we had to address that. So some of it is really addressing the situation to be successful. I always want to look at tax reductions when we can, in terms of bringing relief to people. What I would say on the pension tax question, that was an equity question. So I don't see that being put back on the table, because we were doing something that in many respects was unfair. And to accommodate people that were having the benefit of that, we grandfathered people in. So anyone 67 or older, the tax law didn't change regarding pensions. Anyone between 60 and 67, we put in special provisions for them. If you're less than 60 years old when it changed, you were probably having to pay something now. But if you think about it, was that actually a fair answer compared to having seniors that were still having to work because they didn't happen to have the right kind of retirement income and they were paying tax? So what we did is we eliminated the pension exclusion, and we actually put in a new senior exclusion. So we shifted it, so now if you're in Michigan and you're less than $40,000 as a married couple, you won't pay any Michigan income tax, regardless of whether it's that particular kind of pension income, other kinds of income, or the fact you're still having to work. Isn't that much fairer and better in terms of a system that works? And it still makes us among the top 10 most generous in the country.
During the Snyder administration, there have been any number of things that you and your party have been quite critical of, including a pension tax, certain deductions that have been taken away for homestead property tax, for the earned income tax credit, child care credits, some of those kind of things. If you're elected governor, how will you address those things that you have been critical of?
Yeah. Well, look, I have a different economic approach than our current governor. You know, his is the same old tried and failed, trickle down economics. You give a big corporate tax break, and these are companies that and business owners that don't necessarily reinvest. They may invest the money on Wall Street where it's not creating jobs here. You know, we have a consumer-driven economy. You know, Henry Ford got it. When you paid workers enough to buy one of their vehicles, that was good for his business. So what Rick Snyder has done is he's taken money out of people's pockets that live pension check to pension check or paycheck to paycheck, and it's hurt our economy. That's why our rate of job growth is 1/3 of the nation's rate of job growth. So to me, it is about fairness. It is about an economic model where people have money that they can invest in the economy and in Michigan businesses that hire Michigan workers. So I think the easiest thing I'll do as governor is to repeal the Snyder job-killing pension tax, as well as changes in the homestead property tax credit that have resulted in property tax increases on seniors. You know, a retired couple born after 1952 pay $3,100 more a year in tax. Multiply that thousands of times. You know, that's hurting Michigan. I mean, working families that have 2 kids saw their taxes go up 77% by this governor, while businesses got an 86% tax cut, and his top officials in state government got 80 and 90% pay raises. The top guy making $330,000 a year. That's not fair, and it's not helping our economy. That's why we need a change.
When it comes to repeal, you have promised to repeal what you always refer to as the right to work for less. You
yes.
always
yes.
categorize it
yes.
that. How do you go about that?
Well, I think will be a change election, Rick. You know, I feel the buyer's remorse out there all over the state, even among Democrats that voted for Rick Snyder. And I have almost every day where a Republican voter will come to me and said, I thought I was getting something different from Rick Snyder and I'm going to vote for you this time. So there are great candidates all over the state. I think we're going to do very well as a Democratic Party this election. But look, I will make the case that, you know, that repealing right to work for less is about our economy. You know, our current governor didn't base his decision on an economic analysis in case he didn't do one. You know, he said right to work would be divisive for Michigan, said he didn't plan to do it. His own MEDC didn't even do an economic analysis. They admitted that. And Rick Snyder can't point to one single job that's been created as a result of right to work or a single company that's come here as a result of that. So, and the research says, and I've read a number of academic studies that states that have enacted right to work for less have seen wages go down for all workers in that state, not just for union workers. So, you know, if we want to create a high wage, high skill, high growth economy, we don't put Michigan in the opposite direction. And that's what right to work for less does. It also hurts the readiness of our workforce. I mean, my number one priority is education and talent. And, you know, apprenticeship and training programs that are provided at no taxpayer expense are an incredible asset to us here in Michigan in training a workforce that helps us rebuild our infrastructure and make sure buildings are safe, help us manufacture products that we need. So it was bad economic policy. It really was a pure political attack. And, you know, as governor, my decisions are going to be based on policy and impact on building a strong middle class here in Michigan. And an economy, Rick, an economy that works for everyone.
Where are we with right to work now? That's the law of the state. And is it showing any results, negative or positive?
Yeah, what I'd say is, one, I was standing up for hardworking Michigan people. They have a choice now. They have a choice to say, if they see value in a union, they're welcome to join. I mean, they should want to join. They should be happy to pay dues if they're seeing real value. If they see no value, should they be forced to pay something? That's not right. So it's really giving empowerment and letting people set the terms of their employment to say it's worth it or not worth it. If anything, what it should do over the longer term is making unions more responsive and accountable to their members, because they should want to present a value proposition that people see as worthwhile. So I don't view it as a negative in that regard at all, because again, that's basically saying if you have a great product or a service, people should want to buy it. If you don't, people aren't going to buy it. The other thing it did is it significantly increased our business development pipeline in the state. in terms of companies that never looked at Michigan or wouldn't look at Michigan now are looking at Michigan to bring jobs here. And we've seen a big uptick in that. And so that's an opportunity to bring more and better jobs here. Because I like to ask people sometimes with right to work, if you remember the protests and the signs and all the terrible things that are going to happen, has people really seen a major negative impact in their life? No. Actually, it just means people have an option now, that they can either keep their hard-earned resources or decide they see something worthwhile and pay something for it.
We're back with more To the Point in just a moment. So there is what the Republican and Democratic candidate for governor think on some major issues facing Michigan. Next week, you'll hear from third-party candidates on a wide variety of subjects, including what their parties are all about. I hope you'll join us next and every Sunday morning, 10 o'clock on Wood TV for To the Point.